Okay, I want to welcome you to the second video on factoring. In the first one we talked about factoring out the greatest common factor, but all we did in that video is we looked to see how to find the greatest common factor. So in this video we're going to actually factor out the greatest common factor. So let's look at some problems. We have 30x minus 18 and we want to factor out the greatest common factor. So we want to find the greatest common factor of 30x and 18. So what's the greatest common factor of 30 and 18? Well, that's 6. Okay, so we have a greatest common factor of 6. Now let's look at the x term. Here we have an x term and here we don't. So there's not a greatest common factor of the variables. So the greatest common factor of 30x and 18 is 6. So what we're going to do is we're going to factor out a 6. So we're going to pull a 6 out of this 30x. So if I take a 6 out, that's going to leave me with 5x. And then I have minus. And if I take a 6 out of the 18, that's going to leave me with 3. So here's 30x minus 18 factored. And the easy way to check is if I multiply this back out, I should end up with this. So I have 6 times 5x is 30x. 6 times minus 3 and I get minus 18, and you can see I get the same thing back. So this is my final answer. Okay. Now let's look at this one. 25a squared plus 4a. So we want to find the greatest common factor of 25a squared and 4a. So I look at the 25 and the 4. There's not a greatest common factor of 25 and 4. So now I look at a squared and a. The greatest common factor of a squared and a is a. So if I take an a out of 25a squared, I'm left with 25a. And then if I take an a out of this 4a, then I'm left with a 4. And here's my final answer. And once again, you can check it by distributing the a. A times 25a gives me 25a squared, and a times 4 is plus 4a. Okay, let's take a look at some more. Here we want to find the greatest common factor of 6x to the 4th, 12x cubed, and 3x squared. Now, the greatest common factor of 6, 12, and 3 is 3. It's the largest number that will divide into each one. Now let's look at the variables. And remember how we talked about in the first video, it's the variable with the smallest exponent. So here it would be the x squared. Okay, so now if I factor out a 3x squared from the 6x to the 4th, that's going to leave me with 2 squared, because 3x squared times 2x squared is 6x to the 4th. Then if I take a 3x squared out of the 12x cubed, that's going to leave me with 4x, because 3x squared times minus 4x is minus 12x cubed. And then if I take a 3x squared out of here, it is 1. I'm left with 1, because 3x squared times 1 is 3x squared. Now, a common mistake people make is they put a 0 here, but that's not the case, because if I put a 0, 3x squared times 0 is 0, and that wouldn't give me this term. So you've got to put the 1, because 3x squared times 1 is 3x squared. And here's my final answer. Now let's take a look at another one. Here we have a common binomial factor. That's a binomial factor. That's a binomial has two terms. So you can see here I have a plus b, and here I have a plus b. Those are my common binomial factors, the a plus b. So if I pull out an a plus b, if I take out an a plus b from this first term, I'm left with just the w. Okay, so that's times w plus, and then if I take out an a plus b from the a plus b times 6, I'm left with just this 6. So that's plus 6. Okay. This is going to help us later on when we have 4 terms and we factor by grouping. Let's take a look at some more. Okay, once again I have a common binomial factor of x plus 2. Okay, so if I take out the x plus 2, I take out the x plus 2 from this first part, I'm left with just the x. So that's times x. And then if I take out the x plus 2 from the second part, the 3 times x plus 2, I'm left with just the 3. So that's minus 3. And there's my final answer. And let's take a look at one more. Here I have y times x minus 3 minus, nope, I'm sorry, this x here should be a y. I have y times y minus 3 minus y minus 3. Now, once again, you can see I have a common binomial factor of y minus 3. Now, if we look at this, we don't see a number in front of the y minus 3 on the right. Well, the number is understood to be a 1. Okay, the number in front of that y minus 3 is understood to be a 1. So if I factor out the y minus 3, I've got y minus 3 times, and then if I factor out the y minus 3 out of the first part, I'm left with y. And if I factor out a y minus 3 out of the second part, I'm left with a minus 1. And so this is my final answer. I hope this helped you in factoring out the greatest common factor. Like I said, I'll have there's more videos. You can watch them all. Thanks.